How's it going, everybody? I am Donut. As always, this is a Black Lives Matter, all cops are bastards, and trans rights supporting channel. If you're not supporting that shit, get the fuck off this channel. We are here to talk about some 60s stuff I've really enjoyed, because we have done a bit of a deep dive into the 60s, both on the channel and off the channel. Way more off the channel than on the channel, honestly. But if you've been following the channel, you've been noticing I've been doing a lot of 60s manga recently. How the hell did we even start doing this? Why am I reading a bunch of 60s manga? Well, I decided to read Devilman at one point. That was in the 70s. I enjoyed it so much that I wanted to read all of Go Nagai's stuff just instantly. I've only done that with Fukumoto, but that was me like, this is what I want to do next. This is going to be the next era of the channel, reading everything by Go Nagai. And then I read Shameless School, which was one of the very first Jump series, if not the first Jump series, like as in, you know, among the ones that were in issue number 1. Then we also checked out some more stuff by Go Nagai in the 60s. Then we checked out Boss of the Brats, which was another Weekly Shonen Jump series, and it just kind of went from there. I just realized, like, oh, I'm really into this sort of stuff, getting this history. I'm someone who does a lot of projects, as in, like, I'm doing something from the start all the way through. I'm someone who's very obsessed with that. I can't even watch a sketch comedy show out of order. I need to watch it in order. And so there's a lot of things that I don't fully get everything out of unless I am immersing myself in the time that it is from. And so, like, even Devilman, I read it and I liked it a lot, but I like it way more now that I've read so much more 60s stuff than when I just read that one thing. And it's just something that is very me particular. I enjoy something so much more when I have the context. My fiance made me watch 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I didn't really get it at all. It was, you know, something where I was just like, it was okay. And then the more I watched around, accidentally hit the button to stop the recording, whoops. But yeah, I thought it was okay. And then the more stuff I've watched, the more and more I've been like, okay, I get it now. I understand. And there's just a lot of stuff like that. Even as I was going through the 60s stuff, sometimes I would jump ahead a year or two and be like, I can't even comprehend this. I need to watch more movies leading up to this to even get it. I'm really weird. I get it. I don't understand why I'm like this, but I am. There's so much manga that my entire life I have not been into that now I'm like, oh, I would definitely be into it now that I have context for what led up to that or something. So, truthfully, I think this is not a 60s thing. I think I'm just reading a bunch of manga from the 60s, which we're done with now. Now I'm going to be reading a bunch of manga from the 70s, and by that I mean we're going to be reading manga from 1970, then we're going to be reading manga from 1971, then 1972, and so on. Not just, like, anywhere in the 70s. That's what I did with the 60s, and that was a mess. I don't want to do that again. I want to go in order. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, that's what we're going to do going forward. So, I want to do a little bit of a awards section here. What was my favorite 60s manga? And then, extrapolating from there, I have also, like, this started with me being like, I want to watch some, like, 60s horror movies. What was that? And then that just ballooned into, I watched nothing but 60s horror movies for Halloween. And it's been about a year. It's been longer than a year. I started this whole 60s binge in October of last year. Now it's December. But a year and some change. Now we're over. That was for all the 60s. Who knows how long it's going to take me to get through each individual year of the 70s, because I've been really waiting to get to the 70s. But that's for another time. And if there's anything more, if there's any manga from the 60s that you want me to read still, that I have not read yet, or if there's any that you want me to continue with, Lupin, Cyborg 009, Mutant Sabu, if you want me to continue with any of those, let me know. Otherwise, I'm probably just going to say, it was a fun experiment, you know, I'm going to leave it there. But if people really want me to read more Lupin, if people really want me to read more Cyber 009, Mutant Sabu, whatever, let me know. But, all that said, let's get into what are my top 10 manga from the 60s. For most of these lists, I'm also going to be doing, I don't know if this is going to be a separate video or in this video, I don't know what I'm doing. But movies, songs, Star Trek episodes, comics, nudie cuties. We're going to be going through a lot of different stuff. But most of them were like top 15. Manga, I couldn't even do a top 15 because there's, you know, making this list made me realize there's a lot of manga from the 60s I like, but honestly not that much. You know, most of it's manga that I was like, it was okay, it was alright, but I think that's also, you know, even if I'm reading okay manga, it's informing my opinion. It's like eating my vegetables. I like to do it, okay? But anyway, so what is my top 10 manga? Number 1, with a bullet, easily without a shadow of doubt, number 1 favorite manga from 1960s is, from 1968, Shameless School by Go Nagai. Again, as we said, was in the very first edition of Shonen Jump. It definitely exemplifies what Shonen Jump is about. It really is like the most popular thing that was running at the time. It's crazy how many covers it got, that a gag series was like the biggest thing. But understandable. It's extremely funny, and it's a manga which I feel like very rarely do I relate to a lot of characters in manga in school, and Shameless School absolutely did. That really, felt like the kind of, life I had growing up, rather than most school series where it's so tame or whatever. But Shameless School obviously heightened to a big degree, but still, I really, it really hit me in a very emotional, nostalgic level that a lot of other stuff doesn't. And it's horny as hell. It's very, very funny. It's extremely funny. It's peak Gonagai, truly. Speaking of peak Gonagai, number 2 is Abashiri Family from 1969. A series that is so hard to describe because who knows what the fuck this series is. It's a group of bad people, bad family, bad, evil family members. Not truly that evil though, but you know what I mean. They're just kind of like shitheads that just get up to weird shenanigans. They're either fighting people or doing a cultural festival or traveling through a fucking mindscape. Who knows? It's whatever. It's pulp weirdness. It's so bizarre, and I like it for that. It's impossible to describe the series. I don't know why I like it so much, other than just it'll do whatever the fuck it wants to do. There's no rules. There's no concept to even what the series is. So I love it for that. It's hard to recommend to people, but it is pure art weirdness and doing whatever you want. Pure id. Then we got number 3. Another Weekly Shonen Jump series here from 1969. We've got Boss of the Brats by... Who is this by? This is by Motomiya Hiroshi. But yeah, Boss of the Brats, Otoku Ipiki Gaki Daisho. Not within the first issue of Weekly Shonen Jump, but I think within like the second issue or something like that. But either way, this is an insanely good series. If you have not read it, this one I absolutely can recommend. The other two are very much so up my alley, but I feel like this is much more up other people's alleys. And so I recommend my reactions for Shameless School and Abashiri Family. Boss of the Brats, I would recommend, my reactions, of course, but also you read it yourself, whatever. It's an insanely good series. It is very similar to another series we'll get to here in a second, and we'll talk about more there. You know what? It'd be easier to talk about if I go to number 5, or number 4 as well. So, real quick, first, number 4, Tomorrow's Joe, from 1968, Tetsuya Chiba, and Asao Takamori? I hope I got that right off the top of my head. But Tomorrow's Joe and Boss of the Brats, very similar series, but I do like Boss of the Brats more. I think Tomorrow's Joe has a more interesting main character. Joe is a more interesting main character, as much as I love Mankichi. But I think Boss of the Brats has a more interesting story to me, because as much as I do love sports manga, but I like, more delinquent stuff more than sports manga, and so sports manga with delinquent, themes to it I like, but something like Boss of the Brats, where it's not really a sports series, more of a fighting series, but also, it's more politics than Tomorrow's Joe, surprisingly. Its politics can be, different places sometimes, but I really like what we do with it. It is, I don't know, it's such a forge, it's a kind of manga I've never read in my life, the kind of stuff we're doing in it, the kind of fighting series it is, doing this very juvenile sort of fighting series while also entering into the world of adults, having so much politics, having so much banking and money stuff going on. It's fascinating. It's a near perfect manga so far. It is truly 9 out of 10, I would say. It is so good. And then Tomorrow's Joe, again, as I said, I like the boxing aspect of it, but I definitely like the more delinquent aspect of it more. And so the fact that Boss of the Brats is, they're both very, very similar main characters, very similar energies, very similar backstories to the characters and stuff, and but I would still recommend Boss of the Brats over Tomorrow's Joe, despite the fact that they're both fantastic. Number 5, we got Lupin the Third from 1967 by Monkey Punch. Again, a series that is very exemplary of the times, in the same way that Boss the Brats and Tomorrow's Joe are very exemplary of their times, but in a very different way. Lupin's for, like, the mod scene, the popular scene. Boss the Brats, Tomorrow Joe is for the leftist scene, the neglected scene, the, like, down on their luck kids. And so they're very different series, but they're all three, very much about the times and very, very that. I was not prepared for how, like, villainous Lupin was going to be as a character. I was not prepared for how immoral and all that the whole manga was going to be in a positive way. But at the same time, it's one where the four that we just went over are ones that I'm going to be reading to the end of, probably. And then starting with Lupin going down are ones where I've either already finished it or, like I said, Lupin, Samurai, or Cyborg 009, Mutant Sabu. They're all ones where it's like, if you guys want me to continue, I will continue, but they're so long, and there's moments that I really like from it, but overall, it's kind of middling a little bit, I would say. It's got good moments, but I suspect the really good stuff people love about Lupin comes way later, but I'm not the kind of person that can jump into way later stuff. It's impossible. That's the whole point of why I'm doing all this. I cannot simply go, oh, well, I'll read later Lupin stuff. Impossible. Literally impossible to me. Then we have number 6, Minotaur's Plate from 1969 by Fujiko F. You know who I'm talking about, the Doraemon people, or the person, the one guy. Either way, this was a one-shot, but yeah, a one-shot got this high up on the list. I really enjoy Minotaur's Plate. If you have not read it, or seen my reaction to it, go check that out right now. As I said for the title of the video, it's just a very classic, original series Star Trek, one-shot is exactly what it kind of felt like to me. It's early 60s sci-fi, and what more can I want than early 60s sci-fi, because it's some fun, goofy, cheesy, campy stuff, and also usually some horny stuff as well. So, Number 7, we've got Orochi by Kazuo Umezu, or Kazuo Umez. From 1969, this was a collection of horror one-shots that do have, like, a through-line character, classic, like, narrator, creepshow style, or, whatever. Twilight Zone, whatnot. But yeah, so Orochi was, it was again, like, some of them hit, some of them miss, but overall I think it's a fun read. It's actually very Halloween-y feeling, and very, like, it's not scary, but it's very Halloween feeling. So that was a very fun one. It was like a 6-hour reaction. It was so long, but, it's been nice to see Kazuo Umezu's work and everything. And speaking of, number 8, we got Cat-Eyed Boy from 1967, also from same person, Kazuo Umezu. Another one-shot collection with a consistent narrator, but this one I feel like was a little bit more miss than it was hit. I liked it, but it was also, I don't know, it wasn't as scary, it wasn't as Halloween-y, it was just sort of like, yep, we read that, it had some good moments, but overall, it's not one I would even, like, recommend or anything. Number 9, we've got Cyborg 009 from 1964 by Ishinomori. Surprisingly, this one's quite low, because I did really enjoy the first arc, but each subsequent arc has been kind of less and less interesting. Even the Vietnam arc I thought was going to be really fascinating, but it wasn't that interesting. I feel like Ishinomori is someone with a lot of really good ideas, but not a lot of great follow-through. Mutant Sabo, same sort of idea. It's a really cool idea, but the follow-through didn't quite work as well. And like some of his other smaller stuff we've read, very similar, with like Supai or whatever. Interesting idea maybe, but like it didn't execute it very well. And like Ishinomori is very tough with that, because I really like his ideas. He got some fascinating ideas, and I'm reading a lot of Ishinomori, but he doesn't quite make it work. Then number 10, we've got Sally the Witch from 1966. This was by Mitsutero Yokoyama, I believe. A very prolific mangaka who has also invented a lot of genres. And there's another genre that he invented, Magical Girl. Did he truly invent Magical Girl? No, of course. But what we mean by that, whenever you say who was the first, there's always multiple answers. Is it literally the first via every like stretch of the definition that you could possibly stretch it to? Is it the first via a very strict definition? Is it what made it the most popular? All three of those are what you could say is the first or invented something. And so we're saying Sally the Witch invented it via the fact that it was the first popular one. There was also, another one that was a manga before it, but Sally the Witch was the first anime one. It's a lot of stipulations, but either way. It was just a quick, short, little Magical Girl series. It was, a fun, quick read. It's nothing to write home about. I would recommend it over Cyborg 009 and a lot of other stuff like Cat Eye Boy and Orochi, simply because it's so short, and so it's very easy to get through. But, yeah, I think those are my top 10. So I thought I would have more. I thought I'd be able to make a top 15, but honestly, I couldn't. There's a lot of middling stuff in the 60s that I enjoyed reading because of how informative it was and for a historical aspect. But when I think of, would I recommend this to an average person? No. The ones I would recommend to an average person are Boss of the Brats, Tomorrow's Joe. Those, absolutely you should read. If you are a pervert, you should read Shameless School and Abashiri Family as well. If you're not Boss of the Brats, Tomorrow Joe, those are the ones for you. And I would highly recommend to everybody the one-shot Minotaur's Plate. I would definitely recommend that as well. That's the manga that I read in the 60s. I think this is my obsession with the 60s definitely comes from a lot of other stuff that's not manga. I feel like manga is pretty not that great in the 60s, honestly. I think the 50s is that's when manga becomes manga in the first place, truly. And we have, only a couple artists, but they are doing insane works. Then the 70s as well, we have another, 70s is going to be amazing. There's so much great shit we've already read in the 70s, and I've only read a couple things in the 70s, but they have been fantastic. And so when I think of what's the 60s manga that I read so much 60s manga that I've liked, and I forgot that I have read a couple in the 70s as well, and I'm excluding those. So the 60s, not that much good stuff. There's 4 that I think are really, really, really excellent, and aside from that, it's crazy going from Shameless School, I think is I think all these are 9 out of 10. I don't think any of them are 10 out of 10, but Shameless School 9 out of 10, Abashiri Family 8 out of 10 maybe, but so wild, so maybe I would say 8. It's just so weird that it gets so high for me. Boss the Brass 9 out of 10, Tomorrow's Joe 9 or 8 out of 10, and then Lupin 6 out of 10, Minotaur's Plate 10 out of 10, but it's a one shot. Orochi, honestly, it's 6 out of 10, I think. Maybe 7 out of 10 for Orochi, 6 out of 10 for Cat-Eyed Boy. And then Cyborg 009, 6 out of 10. Sally the Witch, 6 out of 10. I don't think anything here is a 5. I don't think anything here is a 5. Nothing's average. All these are above average. I will definitely say that. But, and then if you think this is the only manga we've read for the 60s, we've read a lot of one-shots. We've read a lot of Fujio stuff as well. There's been plenty of other stuff. I just don't think it's as good. Anyway, that's my top 10 for the manga. If you're curious, what's my top 10 for the anime in the 60s? I don't know. I ain't watched any of it. I don't fucking know. I'm not an anime person, so I have no idea.